Hi, I'm Tom Eschen, the host of this Power in Politics podcast, the conversation about the issues that are impacting New Yorkers and beyond the most with the people that are making those decisions and also the stakeholders, and also at the same time holding all of those people accountable accordingly. Today, we sit down with Andrea Chrisjohn, an Haudenosaunee woman who also is a trustee of the Iroquois Museum in Howes Cavern. She tells us a little bit about her background as a Haudenosaunee woman in the Oneida Indian Nation. And also we talk about Thanksgiving and how her people look at this holiday year after year. We talk about a myriad of issues at the state level when it comes to addressing the challenges of the indigenous people in today's day and age, but also the culture and the spirituality they bring to our society in this day. So thank you so much for joining us here once again. You can always subscribe wherever you get your podcasts at Power in Politics, or you can see us on YouTube at CBS 6 Albany. We are here with Andrea Chrisjohn. Andrea, here in the Iroquois Museum, on location here for Power in Politics this week. Thanks so much for coming on and joining us. Really appreciate it.
Not a problem. I appreciate it.
So first, before we get into anything else, tell us about yourself, who you are, the people you represent, and why you're here today.
Okay, my name is Andrea Chrisjohn, and I'm here at the Iroquois Museum, a museum that my family's been involved in for 5 decades now. Wow. I have Oneida Haudenosaunee blood. I am not an enrolled member, though. I'm children of the sun, which means my father was an enrolled member of the tribe.
What does that mean, and how does this museum help you find that voice here in terms of that status that you have?
Well, as an unenrolled member of the Oneida, we always grew up saying Iroquois, but now through education and learning more about my own culture, we call ourselves the Haudenosaunee, the people of the Longhouse. I always felt like I was a part of my nation my whole growing up until my grandfather passed. Yeah. He was a standing sachem, or a chief of our tribe, a nation representative, until he passed in '91. At that point, the new nation rep made sure that there was a separation of the enrolled members, and that's when money started coming into our tribe. So there was definitely a separation, and the enrolled members got a lot of benefit from that money coming in. I felt like I didn't really have a voice with my own tribe after that point, and I felt like an imposter most of the time. I certainly wouldn't have sat here with you before I came to this museum, and at that time really felt like I belonged. I showed up at the museum. I know that I've come here as a child and sporadically to events, and I came a couple years back, I think 4 years back, and to an exhibit that was put on, a quilting exhibit, and when I walked in, I was approached by the staff here, and they asked me if I would be a trustee. They said that Chrisjohns have been involved in the museum since its inception almost, and my grandfather was very supportive of this museum, and my aunt Rita, she was a trustee for a long time.
Yeah, you speak to, of course, the family lineage here and that connecting you. But in terms of having that voice, was it the fact that there was others like you here? Was it just the ability to be able to share your story? What was it that made you feel like you had that voice again?
Well, when I walked in and they asked me if I would be interested in being a trustee, I said, well, you know I'm a children of the sun. I am not enrolled. And they said that I was in the right place. And it just happened to be right before the Identify exhibition, which talked about blood quantum, which I do have blood quantum papers that are stamped with the percentage of my blood that is Oneida. So when they told me that I was in the right place and I was offered an opportunity to actually have a voice, I held a lot of anger towards my own nation, for a long time, and I finally, that reconciled within me, radical acceptance of, you know, the position I was in, and it made me realize that they can't take, they could say I'm not enrolled, but they can't take my experiences growing up with my grandparents and being involved in creating art, cultural replicas, and you know, things that, learning ways that we created things and the purpose and the ceremony and all of that. They can't take that away from me. So that's still in my blood. That's still who I am. And when I came in here and I was able to express that in a painting that showed the way I felt about being somebody who's not enrolled, but have, like my grandfather, be a standing chief, but I'm not counted as part of that tribe. It just empowered me. It empowered me. And I look around this museum and there's pieces I've actually worked on that were here when I came here, and pieces from my family all over the museum. So it just reminded me of, you know, if we're gonna separate, like, we should be joining together and having strength and empowering all the people that have this blood that can carry this culture on and keep it alive and nourish it and teach it to our children. And I think, like, dismissing a portion of the community is a detriment.
This place obviously has been very welcome to your portion of the community.
God, yeah.
I guess, what can people like you find here? You mentioned some of your own personal connections.
Oh, people, I think that this museum is forward-thinking. And I believe that if you ever heard of Iroquois, which is not the correct term, but that's what most people know.
Yeah.
If you ever are wondering about the Haudenosaunee, or the people who actually inhabited the land that your people are living on now, and learning how they took care of the earth and how they learned how to survive, and like the idea of what this country was built on, a democracy, a true democracy, that you should come into this museum. And this museum educates with contemporary people to show that we're still here. We're still here, and we're still carrying on our culture. We're still doing our ceremonies. We're still, you know, making things the way that they were made before the colonists came. It might change the way you view the earth, because our connection is so tied to the earth. I mean, there's so many things that you could learn, and you'll see that that we're a separate nation. We're not clumped in with every other Native American is not just the big group. Like, we're all individual tribes, and I think that this museum really does a good job at allowing us to show that we're still here, to provide a space for us to keep our traditions alive, and to educate people so that they understand a little more about, you know, why we are so passionate about the earth, why we are so passionate about animals going extinct, and taking care of community. Money's not everything. Money's not everything. And I think when you come here, you could see some of that value, the values that we had.
You look at some of the challenges that the Native people faced. You think that, I guess, the bureaucracy in which you're describing is getting in the way of maybe overcoming some of those barriers?
Yeah. I think when greed and power when people attach to that, that it totally throws things off. I think that some of the challenges now, I can't speak for every nation. I know some of the challenges within the Oneida Nation are like, they strayed away from the values, and the tradition of their ancestors. It's not about 7 generations ahead anymore. It's not about the leaders not living above the people. It's not about including everybody together and the 5 arrows are stronger. My art piece that I did for that identity identify, there were a couple of them. One of them was the people, warriors standing on the back of the turtle with their 5 arrows, but with money in one hand and the arrows together in another hand. And then the people that were unenrolled trying to get up with 1 arrow and, not being able to climb up to join them and them not looking. I think that if they were really running from a traditional place, the way that the Haudenosaunee believed about their people, that they would be more inclusive. They would care more about what's happening with the people. They wouldn't stop people from talking freely about things that they don't agree with. They wouldn't take their voices away if they said something against the leader. It's stifling. And it pits people against each other. It's a division.
I think this museum is a great example of coming together and what you can get from that, right?
Yes.
And being able to be inclusionary. I guess you walk around here, you see so much that's special, of the culture. I guess for you, why is that important for people to know and to learn about at this point?
Well, I think right now it's important because they're trying to erase our history, first of all. The fact that we're talking about the holiday that's coming up. The miseducation or the misrepresentation of what this upcoming holiday of Thanksgiving is. It's the fact that they are depicting, and all through my youth in school, we had to make little headbands with a feather. And play these pilgrim and Indians and show this peaceful time. But I was saying earlier that I didn't even know it was the Wampanoag tribe. That I had to learn that in adulthood because it wasn't taught in school. They clump us all together. They don't teach accurate history. They start American history, right when the colonists came. They don't want to keep any of our culture alive. It's like a continuation of the residential schools where they were like, kill the Indian, save the man. They just wanted to squish us out, assimilate us, and just let us live in a way to peacefully carry on their agenda and just shush everybody. I think the holiday was a perpetuation of that, taught in school. They didn't say that the Wampanoags they saved the colonists. They taught them how to survive here, and then treaties that were made with them were broken. I can't even think of a treaty that was fulfilled that they made with any of the people in this continent before they got here.
So I think that's an important part of this for people to understand. You see some of the other side of saying, well, your people was conquered, so we are able to control that history. But I think a lot of people don't understand is the treaty aspect of this, so that promises were made, right?
Yes, and we weren't conquered. We were bamboozled. Is the fact that we were allowed the fact that the history is told that we were conquered. We weren't conquered. We didn't have the same concepts. We didn't believe that we could own land. That was unfathomable to our people, to the people that lived here. We believed we were stewards of the land. The land is the center of our spirituality. The earth, it provides for us, and we provide for it, and we treat it without, you don't take too much. You don't take more than you need. You give back. There was a respect for it. So I don't believe we were really conquered. We were ignorant to the concepts that were brought over here. So these agreements that were made in these treaties were based on our knowledge, and honestly, when you are truthful and like, as an indigenous person, it was pretty much, we're very direct. I mean, Haudenosaunee Wolf Clan people, we're very direct. There's no fluff.
Yeah.
We say what we mean what we say, and so these treaties were taken at that value. Like, okay, you can live here, we trust you. There was trust that wasn't earned. And I think I think that we're a strong people, and I think that we, if we had ideas of those concepts and we had time to watch how colonists acted, we would have walked into a treaty with a different mindset. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that we're pretty strong.
Yeah. It's known and regarded amongst your people, the United People, National Day of Mourning, correct? Is that still the moniker? Or is that still...
That's an individual... I know in my opinion, and I talk to a lot of people to ask about this, and in my opinion, it's a hypocrisy. It is a day of mourning when you think about, like, the celebration of the slaughter of Native Americans, or the attempt of cultural genocide, after being welcomed and providing aid, broken promises. It doesn't, especially right now where this country is concerned with immigrants, is like the biggest hypocrisy to me. I mean, on your Statue of Liberty, bring me your weak, bring me your tired, seeking asylum. That's like now all of a sudden that doesn't matter? Like, you come here, displace 500 nations because you're running away from some oppression. You're running away from a situation where you don't have freedoms. You come here, displace 500 nations, dismiss their culture, try to commit genocide and with some success, wipe out all these people and then say nobody else is welcome. It just doesn't make any sense. You're having a dinner celebrating essentially freedom, like a lot of the holidays in America. And it's always like, freedom for who, I've
spoken to some who say it's okay to be thankful, but also you have to recognize the origin. Do you think that there's anything to that?
Well, if you know Haudenosaunee people, we're thankful all the time. I live in gratitude. As soon as I open my eyes, I'm thankful. And when I drive and look at the trees and the grass and the colors, and I raise my kids to be the same way, thankful for everything. So thankfulness is, being thankful is a daily thing. It's not once a year. And yeah, I'm thankful all the time. So, and we also, as Haudenosaunee people, we give this Thanksgiving address, which is the translation. I can't pronounce the word, but it's the words they say before anything important. So if two people are discussing something important, they first make sure that their minds are aligned with a Thanksgiving address, which they go through every component of the earth and say, like, the Creator, we're thankful for the sky. And they say, we all agree? Yes. We're thankful for the swimming creatures. We're thankful for the walking creatures, the birds, the flying creatures. We're thankful for the grass. And each time you have to make sure you're in agreement. And they go in with that mindset before any of their decisions any of their important conversations that they're having, they start with gratitude. So it's a concept that we breathe, we live and breathe. It's not just something that we say, today we're going to remember and be thankful. It's something we're thankful all the time.
Feels like that's a message that a family sitting down for Thanksgiving probably should hear. Anything else any message you would have to someone gathering a group on Thursday, any other day over the course of the holidays, just about, the nature of it all and what people should know?
I think, well, in my opinion, I think that people should just think about, during this time, think about the people who are suffering, the marginalized people right now especially. Think about if you're a person who has your dog tied out to a tree while you're in there eating a nice meal in the warmth. Anywhere that you can make somebody's life better, animal, earth, trees, anything living, I think is what people should think about while they're celebrating. And also look at like the land you're on. There's interactive maps out there that show exactly what tribes lived on those lands before it was colonized, and maybe learning a little bit about these different nations, educating yourself about the original people of this land that they call America, and look at like how they honored the earth and how they honored their ancestors, and the things that they wanted to make sure that their children knew and continue to know and pass on. I think like that's important.
As we get to times like this, and you speak of those populations that aren't as remembered or thought of, something that we've done reporting on in the last couple of years, the missing and murdered indigenous women, and the issue and the startling trends when it comes to that. I know that there was a task force last December approved by the state, signed into law by Governor Hochul for BIPOC women and girls, and kind of looking to see what needed to be done to help change this trend.
Well, the fact that you reported on it is a good step, because I think there was Gabby Pepito or whatever her name. Everybody knows this woman's name, mm-hmm. and it's because she was a white woman. Nobody knows. This is why the say their name is so important in the Black culture, is because people are not reporting about this. We are secondary. We're an afterthought. And honestly, with this upcoming agenda that's stepping into control, it's part of that aligns with that thinking, that there, I think reporting more airplay, actually putting their name out there so people would, I could pull that name out of my memory, having it so people know the names of these people that are missing. On my social media, don't look me up. On my social media,
I think it's made everyone look you up.
I actually try to repost as many of those as I can when people go missing and murdered indigenous people. Just because that's one of the things that could help, is the more people that are aware, it's scary.
Yeah, and it's troubling. I've spoken to some that say I could be part of that statistic. Not me, but the person I spoke to, that is an indigenous woman. She goes,
my daughters can.
Right, yeah.
I don't know if I could. But anyway, maybe.
Yeah.
I just know it's scary to send my girls out in the world today. And I'm like a helicopter mom when it comes to that. But yeah, I think more just airplay. Is everything. Being able to, the fact if we could have it on the news when somebody's missing, and, I mean, they go months and people don't even report about it. So that would be a huge help, I think.
This past summer, the governor held sort of a meeting, I guess, with some of the nations here in New York State. And there were some different initiatives that were spelled out in the Indian Child Welfare Act. There was the access to dental health, money put towards that, and also looking at some offensive representations inside the Capitol. What did you think? I know you went over some of those different tenets that she spoke with some of the nations about. What do you think of those areas and what the state's doing at this point?
I think it's a good step. It's encouraging that, and I also read about the Onondagas and how she went to the Longhouse.
Yeah.
They said somebody hasn't been there in 50 years. A person who was a seated governor hasn't visited there. So it's good that they are meeting the indigenous people where they're at and actually listening. I think that the initiative about the strengthening of the the Indian
Child Welfare Act.
Child Welfare Act
1978, yeah.
is a good thing, because I just read recently that the last residential school was closed in 1996. And I mean, just making sure, that's another way to keep our culture thriving, and is to make sure that the indigenous children go with indigenous families so that they can learn. I mean, that's the best way to learn about your culture, is to live in it. And I think that is a good step. I think any health, any benefit that can help people that are impoverished, indigenous people is a good step. I also liked the fact that they gave land back.
Yeah.
That's a big thing I follow, is the land back movement. And it's funny, is you hear these environmentalists and they talk about these practices that should start being implemented, but in reality, if the land was still under the stewardship of the indigenous people who have the direct connection to the land, that they're almost regurgitating things that we did in practice, and it's almost like a new concept when it isn't a new concept. So I think that the land back was really a good step.
That's back to the Onondagas, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned the residential schools a couple times, and for me, from someone that's in this business and follows it, I mean, the Biden administration acknowledging that.
I know.
Recently.
And there was a lot of mixed emotions.
Yeah.
I
Because that's something that I think it's picked up speed of people talking about that in recent years because of some of the reporting that's come out.
Oh my God, it's horrifying.
Especially in Canada, but also in the States too.
And my brother's mother-in-law actually was a scooped kid. Her and her siblings were all scooped. They called them the scooped kids because they were scooped up off the street and brought away from their parents without their parents' knowledge. And then you see now in these reports where they're digging up babies' remains under these. It's horrifying. It's horrifying. I forget what you just asked me.
To have the acknowledgement. I think you're right. I think it's really startling, and maybe one of something that you would hope people would talk more about.
Yes.
Because of just kind of what that is. I mean, I think you just pictured that in your head, which made you just.
The fact that I know somebody who that happened to
exactly.
is
like it's a very personal connection
to
you specifically.
History.
Yeah.
It's relatively not long ago. I can't even consider it history because it's so close. But I think, I don't even know, that one gets me. The residential schools.
Yeah.
The fact is right now there's a lot of influence. There's a lot of mix between church and state going on. And it's hard for me to realize that the church is influencing decisions. I know it's not the source. I think I am truly of a Haudenosaunee mindset where I think people should have the freedom, and I'm open to, want to deny anybody their freedom of what they believe that makes them feel safe. But I do believe that you can't push that on other people. And when I think about the church, I know that it was a tool, the religion was a tool by the missionaries to take us away from our culture, to further the agenda. And right now, in this political climate, it feels like that is coming back around and is being put on us again. I know that there's a lot of people who are religious, and I believe that they walk the walk. I trust them. I believe they come from a place of good morals and values and could just not be educated about other cultures, and that's where they're open. But I also believe that this religious tool is still being used, and I don't know, it's unnerving to me to think that there is an influence of bringing prayer into schools, and like it feels backwards. It feels backwards because that's what those residential schools were for.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, my grandfather didn't go to a residential school, but I remember him telling me that the school he went to, he kept getting whipped for speaking his own language. And when he died in 91, that's the last thing he wanted. That was his last thing he wanted was to talk to somebody in his own language. And the Water Society people came, and the hospital, and they came and talked to him. But like, imagine just being whipped for talking your language. It's just, and this was on the basis of that we were savage, that we were savages, that white man's burden and all of that. Like, I just don't trust it. I don't trust it. And I think that church and state need to be separate. And because in this country, we're like the melting pot, I thought. I mean, we were forced in this melting pot.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was a melting pot and each person could stand on his own with pride in their own culture, live their own life in this word freedom was, it felt like not a distant concept. It felt like it was really happening. And I feel like feels like it's going away.
The word freedom, I guess, especially in this context, it depends on for who, right?
Oh, definitely.
Whose freedom is that?
Yeah.
You spoke about, of course, we talked about the Biden administration and the residential schools acknowledging that. And then at the same time, you just mentioned just having news stories about missing and murdered Indigenous women. I guess I'm curious, the next generation, Sojourner Truth Day, things like that. Do you think that they're hearing enough, and this being out there is helping impact them to be able to grow up and have these voices and to be able to make and help promote a different narrative and a different education about this culture and what it's all about?
Yeah, it's odd that this education has to come from grassroots instead of what's being taught.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think it's encouraging that there's still people out there that are trying to make sure that this is continues. And I was going to say about Biden acknowledging, I've always said, in my opinion, an acknowledgement is necessary. That it shows that you accept this truth.
Because it was very grassroots, the residential school conversation. I know that's, we talked about lacrosse earlier. I know that the National Lacrosse League, which does the indoor version of the game, if you're not familiar, they have a day, and they wear shirts, orange shirts, and with I think it's the hands.
Yeah, every child matters.
Every child matters. They have that, but this is one of the first times I saw a top level, executive level of government actually say, yes, this is a problem. right? And
Yeah,
and it
but-
needs to be addressed.
I mean, it's being said, I'm glad he went out with a bang
Yeah.
with that one, because
I don't think it was expected, you know?
it wasn't
Yeah.
expected,
Yeah.
but it's, of course, and when he talks, he's like so,
Yeah.
he's like so animated.
Yeah, wherever you are in the aisle, yes. That's true.
Yeah, but like I think it's good. The acknowledgement is good. Any acknowledgement means that you're accepting the truth. And the truth is what needs to be told. And I'm glad that you're out here trying to shine light on the truth, because it's so needed right now, especially.
What do you
know?
think of that next generation? These young ones, these teens that might be hearing your voice, might be hearing other voices. What is
Oh,
your
my
vision
goodness.
for that moving forward as someone that sees it on a first-hand basis?
I just hope they stay encouraged, and I hope that they learn how to weed out the nonsense of all the information that's flowing to them. Become researchers. Don't take everything at face value. Continue to stand up for marginalized people. Continue to stand up for the things that you know are right. Just because it seems like everything right now is going in one direction, stand against that current. And I think that there's hope in the next generation. I really do. They've seen a lot right now. I mean, unprecedented stuff going on, that I believe that they're learning how to manage. And I know that there's a lot of people right now that suffer from anxiety and like it's almost an epidemic in itself. But I think when they connect with like-minded people, they keep looking for the heroes, keep looking for the people that are out there with the voice and stand beside them. That they're going to be able to make a change. They're going to be able to make a difference. And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful.
I want to finish with this concept because we were talking about it before we started, just a spiritual connection to different things, I guess. I don't know if I should call them things, but a spiritual connection to different parts of the world, if you will, amongst your people, I think is something that's not understood. And you talked about when, they first came over here and didn't understand the connection with the land, and that it wasn't about the amount of land or bartering or whatever it's going to be. And then we talked about lacrosse and how I said, from speaking to those that the best at the sport, it's not necessarily a sport. It's a spiritual connection to the Creator, and they call it the medicine game for a reason, because it's healing. And I guess, can you just speak to help educate people on what that means, because I think that's one of the more misunderstood parts, and maybe people aren't as educated about that. Whether that's the land, that's the animals. From your perspective, what that means to you.
It's so hard to. I don't know if it's something that can be taught. I think you have to unlearn in order to get it. The comforts of like modern society, the comforts, the disposable era. Everything's made quick and disposable, and landfills are filling. And
Material.
Yeah, material, success being monetary gain, how much things you can have. Like all of those things, I remember my father telling me, I don't have life. Why do we have life savings? I don't have life savings. Like, we didn't even have money. Like, when the colonists gave us coins, we pounded them out and made brooches out of them. The value wasn't in that. It's about values. It's hard. When I talk to other indigenous people, no matter what land they're tied to, no matter what tribe it is, the one thing that I can say that I believe that all these indigenous tribes have in common is their direct connection with the earth. That means that it's planet over profit. Planet over profit. We learned how to survive on this land by watching the land. The land taught us how to survive. Any poisonous plant out there, the medicine, the antidote grows right by it. We watch the animals to learn how to survive. We honor them by when they die, using every part. Wearing them gives us their medicine, that we could have their vision, that we could have their strength in different areas. It's like, just like I said, if you have a dog tied out to your tree, you're not going to get it. And for a long time, I didn't get it. And I had to unlearn what keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up in this world that's feeding you, consume. Like
Very
when
distracting.
it's very distracting, and it's easy to go with the flow. But when you stand against the current, it's hard. You have to, it's strip everything away, take your shoes off, and stand in that grass and quiet your mind and listen to the wind, and like it connects, you're connected to it. What these animals are made up of, what these trees are made up of, is what we're made up of. We're not separate. And that separation, and that's what all these socioeconomical classes, everything is to divide. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when you start being inclusive and realizing we're all humans, we're all here we care about our kids. Do you care about the water being clean? Do you care about the air not being polluted? Do you care about leaving an earth where these kids can, breathe clean air? Do you care about 7 generations ahead? All of the decisions that the Haudenosaunee people made were for 7 generations ahead. They didn't think about themselves only in what they gained right now. It was about how do we keep this going? How do we make sure that our kids have clean air? How do we make sure our kids have? And I think when you're so connected in self, you're solely about me. What can I gain? What can I get? How far ahead can I get? How many cars can I have? How many this, how many that? That's the further you get away from that connection.
Mm-hmm. You can bring it back to the museum where, those that might not understand that can come and kind of learn about that.
Yeah, you can see by all
Yeah.
the things that we make and how we make it and the things we honor with our sculptures and with our art. It's all about the land. It's all about, the living creatures. It's all about the medicines that were provided. It's about each other.
You have a favorite piece in here?
Huh?
You have a favorite piece in here?
Yeah.
Something that you created or someone else? What is it?
My grandfather did that snap and turtle rattle over there. And my favorite piece is that table over there that me and my father both worked on.
Why? What's that mean to you?
It just makes me think about him. He's been gone for a long time. It just makes me think about simple time,
You brought him up a few times. Seemed very special to you.
Oh my God, I was a daddy's girl.
Why? What made that connection so special?
He was easy to talk to for me. He just was like a superstar in my mind. He was strong, man of few words around people he didn't know, but very funny and silly to the people he did know. He just, I don't think he lived with regret. I don't think he lived with, I think he just was present and mindful. And he was a construction worker and he quit. And he just was like, I gotta be an artist. And he just started, without any money, just started creating art and had his little time of being an artist before he passed. And I just think it was cool.
You speak to the generations. Do you see a part of him still living through you, that legacy?
Yeah, yes.
Is that important to you to be able to carry that on?
Yes, it's very important to me. Yeah. He just was very important to me. Yeah, I definitely see him in me, and I'm grateful for it. I talk to them all the time. I talk to my ancestors all the time.
Andrea, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. Hit the subscribe button right now so you can stay up to date on these news-making conversations about the issues impacting New Yorkers the most: power and politics.